of our invited speaker for today. Good morning po, Dr. Erick.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
It's good to have you here together with us, sir, in this virtual platform today. So thank you in behalf of the PhD Science Education class. My warmest greeting to you, sir, and to all of my classmates who are present for this platform. So this platform is, or this webinar is for a structured equation modeling and interview with an expert, of course, together with us, Dr. Erick, and the rest of the PhD Science Education students. To begin with our interview today, I'd like to request everybody to remain still for as we're going to invite the Holy Presence of the Lord for an opening prayer to be led to us by Miss Iris Jane C. Kalumbay.
Let us put ourselves in the presence of God. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful decision, O God. Fill us with your grace, Lord God, and continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish, is the pursuit of truth for the greater glory of you and for the service of humanity. We ask these things through Christ, one God forever and ever. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Once again, a pleasant morning to all. Isang magandang morning po sa ating lahat dyan. Pakitype naman po sa ating chat box kung maganda po yung morning natin today. So we have a morning greeting from our speaker, Dr. Erick Baloran. Morning. And of course, from Ma'am Arlene Yuson. Good morning po, Dr. Erick, and so all. So, isang mapagpalang araw po sa ating lahat. May good morning na po tayo from Ma'am Yula. May pa-Merry Christmas din tayo from Ma'am Denalyn. Okay, so once again, a pleasant morning to all. By the way, I am Mr. Pat II E. Baguio, the group representative of PhD Science Education. And in behalf of the class, I'd like to extend my warmest gratitude to our invited speaker for today, Dr. Erick. Thank you very much, sir, for gracing our invitation. Despite of a very short notice, we are very much grateful to you, sir, for gracing our invitation. Although we have just informed you, I guess, just yesterday, but still you will be able to grace and accept our invitation to us today. So learning has always been quoted as a continuous and lifelong process. And indeed, today we will be learning another new insight and input coming from the expert, which will be talking about how he used or utilized the structural equation model in his research. And of course, we are also expecting that with this interview, we'll be learning something significant that would be very useful in our future endeavor as we continue our PhD journey. And with that, we are very much grateful with your presence po today, Doc. So once again, in behalf of the whole PhD Science Education class, I welcome you all, especially our invited speaker for today, Dr. Erick T. Baloran of University of Mindanao. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us today, and God bless us all. All right, so kita-kita na lang jud diri ano. So as what I have mentioned earlier, that we are all gathered today in this platform for a very significant and purposeful reason. And to know what's really our purpose of being here today, let us have Sir Romeo A. Villarin for his statement of purpose.
My due respect to our invited speaker and to everyone in here. A wonderful morning. So as part of the final requirement of the subject Education 301, Quantitative Research Method in Education with IPR, we will be having an exclusive interview with the expert on structural equation modeling today. SEM integrates a number of different multivariate techniques into one model framework. So it is an integration of measurement theory, the factor analysis focusing the latent variable, the path analysis, regression analysis, and simultaneous equations. Therefore, SEM is a multivariate statistical analysis technique that is used to analyze structural relationships. So we are so lucky enough and grateful that our invited speaker gave us a chance to grace our invitation despite of his left and right engagements. With us, Sir or Dr. Baloran, let us be ready for this very informative session this morning. So God bless everyone.
All right, so indeed, this is very an informative session today, but as mentioned by Sir Romeo Villareed, this is part of our final requirements for our course in quantitative research with IPR, but this is not just a mere interview, but this would somehow with this session would be able to fill in some of the gap in understanding SEM. So for us to be able to give ourselves an enlightenment on how this method would be used and how would this be very useful in our future endeavor. And I believe that today's session is attended by our invited speaker, caliber and expert coming from University of Mindanao, and we would be more delighted to know him more. With that, I'd like to request Ma'am Yula Senining to give us the introduction of our invited speaker for today.
Hello, good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce to you our speaker for this morning. He is a graduate of Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in English at the University of Mindanao, Davao City as cum laude in 2012. He finished his master's degree in education, majoring in language teaching at Davao del Sur State College with Best Master's Thesis Award in 2017. He completed his Doctorate of Philosophy in Education, major in Applied Linguistics at the University of Immaculate Conception, Davao City in May 2021 with a dissertation title, Dimensions of a Context-Specific Questionnaire on Language Revitalization Practices Among Bagobo Tagabawa Speech Communities, an Exploratory Sequential Approach. He is currently working on various research projects on local and international platforms. He also had international research engagements like paper presentation within Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia from 2012 to 2022. He received various research awards, such as Best Research Presenter during the first DepEd Regional Research Congress in 2016 with the title Implementation Experiences of Blaan and Non-Blaan Teachers Teaching MTB-MLE Blaan Communities, a Phenomenological Inquiry, and Best Research Presenter during the 2016 DepEd Regional Research Congress with the title On Finding Hope and On Fighting Fate, a multiple case study of school-aged teenagers in conflict with the law. Another award is Best Research Presenter during the National Multidisciplinary Research Conference in Davao City with the title Preventing Language from Becoming Unknown, the Case of Language Shift and Blaan Speech Community. And Best Paper during the 2021 International Multidisciplinary Research Conference on Education, Sciences and Arts at Universitas Universal Indonesia with the title Dyslexia, Not a Pigeonhole, a Single Case of Dyslexic Adult Learner. Further, he has published research papers in international journals. In May 2020, he had his first Scopus Index publication in UK titled Knowledge, Attitudes, Anxieties, and Coping Strategies of Students During COVID-19 Pandemic. COVID-19 pandemic. At present, it has now a total of 547 international citations. In September 2020, he published his paper in an international journal titled Emotions, Stressors, Coping Strategies, and Motivational Factors in Private Higher Education Institutions Amid COVID-19 Pandemic, now with 4 international citations. In March 2021, he published another paper in an international journal in Los Angeles entitled Crisis Self-Efficacy and Work Commitment of Education Workers Among Public Schools During COVID-19 Pandemic, now with 30 international citations. In October 2021, he had his second Scopus Index publication in Turkey entitled Core Satisfaction and Student Engagement in Online Learning Amid COVID-19 Pandemic, a Structural Equation Model, now with 34 international citations. And recently, in July 2022, he had his third Scopus Index publication in collaboration with European and other Filipino researchers entitled The Role of Higher Education in Shaping Global Talent, Competitiveness, and Talent Growth. With 615 total number of citations, H index of 4 and I-10 index of 3, he was awarded as the 2022 top scientist in the Philippines by the 80 Scientific Ranking of Research Universities. He's currently working on Scopus research papers in collaboration with Erasmus research scholars from Europe, focusing on impact of COVID-19 in the Philippine educational sector. He is the editor-in-chief of the Gumanan Journal, a multidisciplinary research journal, and managing director of University of Mindanao International Multidisciplinary Research Journal. He works as a research speaker, consultant, evaluator of various higher education institutions in Davao Region and Region 12. He was awarded as the 2021 Most Outstanding Teacher of the University of Mindanao. He is a former junior high school teacher at Casuga National High School and now the Dean of the University of Mindanao, Bansalan College. It's my great pleasure to welcome and introduce to you our speaker for this morning, no other than Dr. Erick P. Baloran. Good morning, sir.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Yola. Am I audible po?
Yes, Doc.
Yes po, Doc, we
Yes
are
po.
here po. Loud and clear.
Good morning, everyone. And it's my great pleasure to be here with you, our PhD students from Surigao del Sur State University. Tama ba?
Yes po, Doc, formerly as the
Yes,
SSU,
Doc.
now Northeastern Mindanao State University.
Okay, sige. Ma'am Yola is my colleague in the University of Mindanao, and I'm proud to also, of course, I knew her. I don't know if she knew me before I had my talk in the university on Scopus publication, but kilala ko si Ma'am Yola kasi siya ang, I guess, first na nag-top coming from the biological science majors. Tama ba, Ma'am Yola, ng university?
Actually, sir, the third, but the first. Kasi may nauna na 2 and 3, and top 2 and top 3. Sila Sir Alvin. But I know you also, sir. Classmate kayo ni Sir Phil and Sir Christian.
Yeah.
And you're also from the university. Alumnus ka din. Hello po. Good morning.
Hello, Ma'am Yola. And it's good to know that you're pursuing now your doctoral degree. Okay. Also, I'd like to acknowledge, no, hindi ko maisa-isa lahat kasi marami kayo. But I'm so blessed again that I was invited for this session as one of your requirements in your PhD in science. I know that your teacher is Dr. Japos, am I right?
Yes po, Doc.
So I hope we'll just make this not too structured kasi this is a form of interview, but anyway, and I would be just sharing some of my experiences and my knowledge about the use or the application of structural equation modeling in quantitative research. And I'm so blessed with Dr. Japos because he had been my inspiration in terms of Scopus publication. Let me just share my experience with Dr. Japos. I was new in the University of Mindanao. I was actually coming from the Department of Education for 5 years. I was a junior high school teacher. Plantilla na yan. And with my engagement in the field of research, I realized that I guess I need to, jump into the higher education because research has been one of course, the core function, or should I say, research has been like an important aspect in the institution, particularly in the higher education. And all our decisions, all our operations are actually based on research. And with that, I decided to transfer to the University of Mindanao to really, of course, expose myself in the field of research. I was new that time. I was still a neophyte. And until now, I consider myself as a neophyte in the field of research. And it was 2020. It was 2019, before the pandemic, in which when I decided to transfer, to resign in the Department of Education and transfer to the university. But when I was still in DepEd, I was doing a lot of research. I was one of the birth grantee, because in the Department of Education they have been providing a funding for research, and it's nice. No, we were the first batch who received the funding in the basic education research agenda, and that was a very nice experience. My research focused on the implementation experiences of IP and non-IP teachers teaching mother tongue learners, particularly the Blaan learners. And that was 2016. And in 2018, I had my second funding for DepEd research, and my research focused on children in conflict with the law. So I'm more into qualitative research. Even in my undergraduate thesis, I am into qualitative research. My second birth research in the Department of Education is quite an intrinsic, or should I say, a sensitive case being done by a researcher, because I investigated the cases of my students who raped and killed their classmate. So the title is On Finding Hope and On Fighting Fate, a multiple case study of school teenagers in conflict with the law. So it's a case sensitive research. And after that, sharing to you my experience with Dr. Japos, after resigning, I decided na lagi lang ako nagkakandak ng research. No? I've been presenting research papers in different research conferences, pero gusto ko talagang mag-publish. It has been a challenge. It has been my inspiration na bakit yung mga pangalan nila andyan sa internet. As ako, lagi lang ako nagpe-present ng paper, but I cannot see my name in the internet. Sabi ko, I need to publish. So I look for a training, and I saw the post, of course, of Dr. Japos. It's a training in Pasay City before the pandemic. It's in 2019. So I decided to join, and thanks God, because the university funded that. And after the training in Pasay, I guess it was 3 days. It was a 3-day seminar training workshop. Dr. Japos was just talking. He was not like very structured in terms of discussing using his PowerPoint presentation, kasi kapag si Dr. Japos nagsasalita, dapat makikinig ka talaga, no? So hindi pwede na hindi ka magte-take note, no? And the only thing that I've learned during his talk is that you start reading, you start collaborating, you start writing, and take the risk to publish, right? So you push yourself to publish. And with that, when I went back to the university, sabi ko, I will not, waste my time, waste the university funding without any output. So during the pandemic, we were locked down inside of course, in our home, no, sa aming bahay. Lahat tayo na-anxious during that time. So I decided to have my research. And that was my first paper publication. On the impact of COVID-19 to students. And on my second publication, I had a research related to online learning, particularly on the core satisfaction of the students in relation to student engagement and online learning. And I've decided to like venture into doing an analysis using structural equation model. Sabi ko, I believe that this has not been really the standard of doing structural equation model, but ang purpose kasi ng structural equation model is to look into the interrelationships between the variables included in your study, or it may show the structural relations between your latent or measured variables. No? So when you speak about latent variables or measured, another term for measured is observed variables. When you say latent variables, these are your variables. Now, these are your existing variables in your study, the main variables of your study, while the measured or the observed variables are technically the indicators of your main variables. Now, at this juncture, I'll be sharing to you my published paper, which technically a correlational research, but I decided to apply structural equation model because I wanted to see how the structural relations between the variables I had in my study. I'm trying to get into the the investigation on how am I going to show the structural relations between the existing variables included in my study. So let me share to you my published paper. Okay, makita na ba?
Yes po, Doc. It's visible in the screen.
So this is my second Scopus publication. So of course, you know about Scopus publication, pero hindi pa kilala ang Scopus publication, hindi pa alam ang Scopus publication. This is, a database. This is a database wherein all reputable journals are actually bank, no? Naka-bank na nandara ang mga reputable journals. Ibig sabihin, these journals are having very high impact, no? Meron siyang mataas ang kanyang impact factor. Ibig sabihin credible, valid, reliable ang mga pine-present diyan ng mga data ng kanilang mga studies. It is peer reviewed because there are existing mga tawag diyan, mga predatory journals ngayon, no, na you're just paying for a big amount, no, dako ang bayad, pero pala siya, predatory, no? So it will not contribute to your kumbaga impact factor nimo as your citations, no, number of your citations as a researcher, kasi siya, kumbaga another term, scam siya ng mga journals ba, no? So this is published in the Turkish online journal of distance education in Turkey, and the title of my research is Core Satisfaction in Student Engagement and Online Learning Amid COVID-19 Pandemic, a Structural Equation Model. And I had, of course, my co-authors here, our school director and our quality assurance officer, or quality assurance in charge, no? So they actually helped me in terms of recommendations. So here, of course, in the introduction part of my paper, I focus on the problematic issues, focusing on the impact of the COVID-19 in the field of education, particularly revealing the situation that our educational sector during the COVID-19 pandemic had this immediate shift from the face-to-face to online learning. And I have presented various literature here from the international down to the national setting. And I was able to provide also existing studies before the pandemic or even during the pandemic about the impact of course satisfaction or the influence of satisfaction towards engagement in learning. Because remember, when you do correlation study or even structural equation model studies, you have to make sure that there are existing literature revealing the link or the association between your chosen variables involved in your study. So if my first variable is course satisfaction, the independent variable, and my dependent variable is actually the student engagement in online learning. So I need to look for existing studies, theories, no, propositions that reveal the link or the influence of my independent variable, which is the satisfaction to the course or course satisfaction to its influence to the student engagement in learning. So that's very important that you have to present that in your paper. Hinahanap yan ng mga peer editors when you want to publish. Even in your dissertation and your master's thesis, if you're doing quantitative research, particularly correlational type of research, you really have to establish very good or substantial literature revealing the link between your chosen variables. Now, you can probably see here in the purpose of my study. So let me read. This study investigated the significant influence of course satisfaction on student engagement and online learning at the University of Mindanao Bansalan College. So these are the respondents of my study. The scope is in our university, in our branch in particular. Furthermore, so dito, I decided, no, technically, ano lang ito, no, this is just a study which applies correlation analysis, but I decided to proceed to determining the best fit model showing the interrelationship between and among course satisfaction and student engagement domains in online learning. So with that, I was guided by this following research question and hypothesis. Number one, I determined the level of the course satisfaction and student engagement in online learning in terms of the skills, emotion, participation, and performance. Technically, course satisfaction, the questionnaire for course satisfaction is a general type of questionnaire. It has no indicators, while the student engagement in online learning questionnaire has 4 indicators, which are skills, emotion, participation, and performance. And number 2, I also applied comparative technique here, the difference in the level of course satisfaction in student engagement and online learning. I analyzed it, compared it by gender, age, year, level, and course. And I also applied correlation, the relationship between the 2 variables, of course, the course satisfaction and student engagement. And lastly, I applied structural equation model, determining the best fit for interpreting the structural interrelationship among course satisfaction and student engagement domains. Ibig sabihin yung mga indicators. Okay. Now, there are some universities actually who would tend to react to this kind of direction in research na they would say, kapag ikaw ay magko-correlation analysis, hindi ka na pwedeng mag-significant, looking into the significant difference. You shouldn't do comparative research. But remember, as a researcher, there are some like urgency. Why do you need to do that? Why do you need to, of course, include or do a lot of analysis, like aside from having the descriptive statistical analysis on question number 1, because this is a descriptive type of question determining the level wherein we will be using mean and standard deviation for that. Yung number 2 naman will be using either ANOVA, analysis of variance, or the what they call this, the t-test, no? The t-test for independent samples. And for number 3, we'll be using Pearson R as a correlational statistical tool. And for number 4, I applied structural equation model with path analysis, of course. And may magre-react, of course, in some universities na hindi pwede, no? But as a researcher, again, it is about the urgency. Why do you need to do that? Because with my goal, I wanted to compare sino ba ang mas highly engaged, sino ba ang mas satisfied in comparing the gender, the age ranges of our students, the year level in the course as well. Sino ba ang mas satisfied? Mas maganda siyang tingnan. And I also did correlation analysis. Tiningnan ko talaga kung may influence ba talaga si course satisfaction kay student engagement. And I of course, for the purpose of testing or for the purpose of applying structure equation model, I decided to have the determination of the best fit model. Paano ba? Kumbaga kasi, yung correlation po, we will be testing if these two variables or the existing variables that we have relationship with each other. And yung structure equation model, kumbaga, paano ba natin mapipicture out, no? How would we picture out yung relationship nila or yung interrelationship ng structural interrelationship ng ating mga variables, no? Both the latent and the observed variables. So it's the SEM. Kasi SEM will be creating a model. Ano ba ang mukha? Kumbaga kung sa relasyon yan siya, si Ellen Adarna at Erick Ramsey, alam nating may relasyon sila. But how would we picture out the relationship? So if you can see some of the posts of Ellen Adarna in the social media, parang yung binuhat siya tapos parang parang nakahiga siya sa shoulders ni Erick Ramsey. That would represent the model of the relationship. So it's just the role of structure equation model. It would give us the best fit model. Ano bang itsura ng structural relationships, interrelationship ng mga existing variables meron tayo. So of course I have my hypothesis. The hypothesis, remember you do hypothesis. You have hypothesis if you have inferential questions. So we have of course 3 inferential questions here. We have 2, 3, and 4. So that is also a requirement for having hypotheses. Now, for my study sample, I had only 529 university students who responded in the survey. And in fact, there is some literature that for structural equation model, at least you can have 300 plus for a structural equation model. Okay. And for correlation analysis, like regression analysis studies, at least you can have 200 to 300 number of respondents for your survey. Now, let me define, of course, the different statistical tools that we use, because this is the main agendum that we have in this session, focusing on the statistical tools. Okay. Now, the first statistical tool that I used is of course the descriptive statistics. I used the mean to assess the level of course satisfaction and student engagement, and for the testing of the difference, I use the ANOVA, the analysis of variance, to test the significant difference in the level of course satisfaction and student engagement when analyzed by gender, age, year level, and course. And for the Pearson R, this is used for the testing of the relationship between the variables. And I also use the normality test, the Shapiro-Wilk test. This is to test to verify the normal distribution of the given data. It's important that it should pass the normality test kasi that would be also basis na reliable yung existing data or raw data meron tayo. There is consistency, of course, of the responses of our participants. And that is also validated through what we call this, reliability testing using the Cronbach alpha. Now, to approximate the structural model, path analysis were further incorporated into the SEM analysis. So, ginamit natin yung path analysis in particular. It's incorporated in the SEM analysis. And to determine the fitness of the hypothesized model, several measures were used. And finally, to better approach the direct relationships between the measured variables, path analysis was used. Okay, so you might be confused about path versus SEM analysis. Technically, path analysis is also known as SEM, but sometimes path analysis is incorporated in SEM analysis. But yung SEM po is we tend to measure both latent and measured variables. For path analysis, it includes it only includes it includes the what you call this, looking into the direct relationships lang ng measured variables, but the SEM analysis would include both latent and the measured or observed variables. But technically, path analysis is always incorporated in SEM analysis. Okay? Ito yung sinasabi ko kanina na reliability testing ng aking questionnaire. So nakapasa siya sa Cronbach Alpha. Sa reliability testing kasi the Cronbach alpha is 0.897, which is greater than 0.70. Okay? Now, so here, of course, with my result sa aking question number 1, objective number 1, the level of course satisfaction and student engagement, and I use the JASP software. So if you are not familiar with JASP software, JASP, it's a statistical software, friendly siya. It's a free software, pwedeng hindi na bayaran. So you can just type it in the Google, the JASP software, install mo siya, tapos pwede mo na siyang gamitin. So ang maganda sa JASP software kasi is naka-format na siya na APA format, APA table format. Okay, so you can probably see here the mean and the standard deviation. So all the mean of the course satisfaction and the student engagement domains are in the high level. Therefore, high ang level ng course satisfaction and student engagement ng mga students in online learning. And looking at the significant difference, so you can probably see here in my published paper that ang may kaibahan lang in terms of the level of student engagement is in terms of year level. So you can probably see here in the post hoc comparison that the second year students and third year students have significant difference in terms of their level of student engagement. It was revealed that third year students are highly engaged compared to the second year students. But the rest of the cases or the rest of the demographic profile that we have here, demographic characteristics, they have the same level of course satisfaction and student engagement. Now, as to the relationship between my two variables, you can probably see here that it is all significant. So when course satisfaction is correlated to student engagement, it is less than the alpha value of 0.001. So therefore, course satisfaction is related to student engagement, as well as course satisfaction is related to the different domains or indicators of student engagement, because all p-values are less than the alpha value, which is 0.001. Now, let's proceed to the structural equation model. So let me read the discussion here, the interpretation. The technique of SEM was applied to test the hypothesized model that specifies the relations among course satisfaction, skills engagement, emotion engagement, participation engagement, and performance engagement. So you can probably see here that my independent variable was actually correlated to the 4 domains of the student engagement. First, the evaluation of model to data fit indices showed that the proposed model well explained the data. Among the fit indices, so in structural equation model, we have this what we call fit indices, and this fit indices has specific standard values, which would be our basis of deciding, of concluding whether our model is a best fit to explain the structural relations between your variables involved in your study. So we have here the chi-square with the degree of freedom. We have to ensure that the chi-square is less than the alpha value, which is 0.001. So in this result, it is less than 0.001. We also have the GFI, which is 0.95, CFI 0.96, NFI 0.96, SRMR 0.031, RMSEA less than 0.001, which indicated a good model fit according to Hare 2006 and Bentler 1999. So what are they, sir? So these are our fit indices standards. Okay, let for a while. Okay, yan. Sige. So here, you could probably see here the fit indices. When speak about RMSEA, it's the root mean square error of approximation. We have the SRMR, the standardized root mean square residual, IFI incremental fit index, Tucker-Lewis index, comparative fit index, goodness of fit, and norm fit index. So hindi ko na isa-isahin yan, no? These are the things. Pag magko-compute na po tayo, we will run our data using the structure equation model. Kahit anong ginamit mo, whether you use just software, you use the SPSS, the AMOS in particular. So ito yung titingnan mo, no? And there should be like a perfect fit standards that you will be looking into. So for example, the RMSEA it should be less than 0.05, okay? And we also have the SRMR. It should be, of course, less than 0.05. The IFI should be at least 0.95. Greater than 0.95, the TLI should be greater than 0.95, the CFI should be greater than 0.95, the same with GFI and NFI. So you can probably see here in my result that our chi-square is, of course, has a p-value of less than the alpha value, which is 0.001, and the GFI is actually 0.95. It is a perfect fit. CFI is 0.96, which is greater than 0.95. We have NFI 0.96 greater than 0.95. The SRMI is less than 0.05, which is 0.031. And the RMSEA is, of course, less than 0.05, which is 0.001. Okay, so therefore, it's a good model fit. So you can see here that this fit statistics suggested that the hypothesis model was appropriate for interpreting the structural relations among the CRS and the rest of the indicators or domains of student engagement. So here, path analysis was then employed to assess the direct relationships among each variable of the structural equation model. So we use path analysis now to look into the direct effect or really effect of the CRS or the course satisfaction to the different domains or indicators of student engagement. So here illustrated in figure 1, course satisfaction in online learning was a significant and positive factor predicting students' engagement. So it has a beta standardized coefficient of 0.33 with a p-value of less than 0.001. So it is technically significant. Emotion engagement as well has a beta standardized of 0.32, which is less than 0.001. Ang p-value, the same with participation and performance engagement. So taken together, course satisfaction played a direct role in student engagement aspects in terms of skills, emotion, participation, and performance in online learning amid the COVID-19 pandemic. So ano bang ibig sabihin ng beta standardized coefficient? It technically revealed how the influence, no, how ilang porsyento ang effect, ilang porsyento ng iyong ng ating mga domains ng ating student engagement was actually affected or influenced by course satisfaction. So it's 0.33, 0.32, 0.29, and 0.23. And how would we interpret that? It only means that 33% of the variance of skill engagement was actually influenced by course satisfaction. In some interpretation, it would say every 1 unit increase in the course satisfaction would result to 33% of the variance of the skill engagement of the students. So that's how you interpret that one. So it's technically like 33% is actually quite a considerable percentage in terms of its impact, no, ng course satisfaction to this specific domain. Okay, but again, this study that I have is it's not really the, you know, the ideal structure equation model that you will be doing in your dissertation, because in the dissertation requirement, we usually have, for example, 4 variables that you have to include in your study, 4 latent variables that you will be including in your study. So with that, I would say that the published paper that I had is you know, a type of structural equation model showing only the interrelationship between one latent variable and the existing measured or observed variables of the latent variable student engagement. Okay, so right now I promised to ma'am last time that I will be showing to you the sample. Okay, I will be showing to you the sample of my advisees having the structural equation model as a study, having 4 variables. Okay, see. So probably you can relate on this because related siya sa teachers. For example, if you will be doing a structure equation model in the context of the teachers, you may apply it into science teachers. But in this study, ang kanyang respondents are actually the elementary teachers, particularly the mother tongue teachers. Okay, so this is actually his paper. Let me show you his paper, particularly on the results. Okay. So this is the result of his study. So ang kanyang study is to determine the model best fits the pedagogical competence of mother tongue-based multilingual education teachers among public elementary schools in, this is region 11, not region 12, it is region 11. So here, part of our discussion, part of the presentation would be the level, of course, of the first independent variable, or we call it as the exogenous variables. Okay, we have the organizational climate. Okay, and the next exogenous variable or independent variable is the level of self-efficacy of the mother tongue teachers. That's the second. And the third is the work satisfaction of the teachers. And of course, the endogenous variable or the dependent variable, which is the pedagogical competence. And we also determine the significant relationship between the first independent variable or the first exogenous variable with the endogenous or the dependent variable. We also determine the relationship between the second independent variable with the dependent variable. And the third one is relationship between the third independent variable or exogenous variable with the dependent variable or endogenous variable. Then the last one is we determine the goodness of the fit measures of the 3-path model, because in the structural equation model, we will be testing hypotheses. Okay, we will be testing hypotheses of the different hypothesized models that we created. Okay, sige. For a while po, Okay, my apologies. Someone called me kasi. Sige po. Now, of course, we have here the result for the level of organizational climate of mother tongue teachers, which is our first independent variable or our first exogenous variable. So here, this ating first independent variable or exogenous variables have different indicators. It has 4 indicators and its levels are from high to very high, but the overall it is in the high level. And next, of course, is the level of your second independent variable or what we call the second exogenous variable. Okay, so we have different indicators as well. We have instruction down to coping with change. So here, you can probably see that it is in the very high descriptive level. So very high po ang level of self-efficacy ng ating mga teachers, okay, mother tongue teachers. The next one is the third exogenous variable, which is the level of work task motivation of teachers. So just imagine if it is applied in the science context na among the science teachers, okay? Now, here the result is that it has 5 indicators and we have from high to very high level of level in terms of its indicators. So in terms of the work task motivation. So meron na tayong results in terms of our 3 independent variables or 3 exogenous variables. Now, we'll proceed now to our dependent variable, which is the pedagogical competence. And you can probably see ang daming na indicators na 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 2, 4, 6. And it is in the very high level ang lahat ng ating mga indicators. Therefore, very high po ang pedagogical competence ng ating mga mother tongue teachers. Now, let's proceed to the relationship, the correlation analysis. You can probably see here in the first correlation that we had, relationship between organizational climate and pedagogical competence. Let's proceed immediately to the overall. It is less than 0.05 and it has a R value of 0.619. It's technically a strong relationship. So therefore, data speaks that organizational climate of mother tongue teachers has a relationship with their pedagogical competence. The same with self-efficacy and pedagogical competence. You can probably see here that the p-value is less than, itong p-value is nasa baba, it's less than 0.05 and strong din ang kanyang R value. It's a strong relationship, strong positive relationship. And therefore, the data speaks that self-efficacy of teachers has relationship with the pedagogical competence. Next is the relationship between work task motivation and pedagogical competence. So marami ka talagang gagawing correlation analysis kasi meron kang 4 na variables. You have 3 independent variables and 1 dependent variable. Okay. Now, you can probably see here that the same result, it's significant. Work, since the p-value is less than 0.05 and strong ang kanyang R value, it's a strong relationship, positive relationship. So therefore, work task motivation is correlated to pedagogical competence. Now, after having the correlation analysis, we'll now proceed to the structural equation model. So here in the discussion, you would probably see that we're testing the 3 path analysis or hypothesized model that we have. And this is technically basically the result. This is the result of the testing of the 3 models. So we have 3 models here. This is the first model. Okay, let me show you the statistical result. Okay, so this is for the model 1. Kasi may gumawa ka ng mga models kasi prior to your data gathering and data analysis. So this is the first model, this one. Okay, so these are your independent variables and this is your dependent variable. So ito yung result ng model number 1. And ito yung mga fit indices result. So tingnan natin, titingnan mo yan kung if it was able to pass the criterion. But if you can probably observe, in fact, with the GFI, hindi siya nakaabot ng 0.95. Same with the CFI, hindi siya nakaabot ng 0.95. It should be greater than kasi. Same with NFI and same with TLI. No? Okay. And the RMSEA is technically greater than it's less than, it's not less than 0.05, it's greater than 0.05. So probably you can probably conclude here that it's not the best fit model. Okay. So yan. So ang basihan mo is itong mga fit indices if it passed the criterion. Okay. So medyo kumbaga would probably see that parang hindi papasa yung model number 1. Okay. For model number 2, you can probably see here the GFI is greater than 0.95 also, the CFI, the NFI, the TLI as well. No? Okay. But the RMSEA is not less than 0.05. No? So maybe you can also probably conclude na baka hindi ito best fit. So tingnan natin, we'll be comparing it with the third model. So this is the second model. Okay? And we have now the third model. So you can see here that perfect fit kasi 1.0 talaga, no? Yan, perfect fit po ang model 3 and the RMSEA is actually less than 0.05. So this is the model 3 now. So with that, we have the summary here. You can probably see that it's the model 3 that best fits. Kasi it all passed the criterion. Now with the CMINDF, it should be less than 2. It should be greater. It should be less than, what is this? This should be what? The value should be greater than 2. Okay, but look at 3, it's not greater than 2, but we would consider the p-value. If we look at the p-value, ang pumastar lang din, silang naman tatlo. But the NFI down to the RMSEA, ang perfect fit talaga is itong si NFI, TLI, CFI, and GFI, which is the model 3. And among the RMSEA values, only the model 3 has the best, was able to attain the criterion or able to meet the criterion, which is less than 0.05. Okay? Yan. And titingnan mo, the P-close is si model 3 po ang may pinakamalaking value ng P-close. So we have now the result here, the discussion to come up with the best model for the pedagogical competence of mother tongue teachers. Path analysis was applied to the 3 hypothesized model. So model 3 came out as the best fit model satisfying the criteria for the standard fit as a result of the causal model data fitting using Pearson R, which should be significant. And we have seen that it is all significant. Yung correlation ng ating mga variables. Another criteria to be considered in order to have a good model fit are as follows. A value of 0.95 or greater than for CFI. We also have RMSEA should be less than 0.05, which is si model 3 lang ang nag-less than 0.05. We also have NFI should be more than 0.95. So therefore, model 3 has satisfied all these criteria, showing that NFI is 1.0, which is more than 0.95, CFI 1.0 greater than 0.95, and RMSEA is 0.00, which is less than 0.05. So you can probably see here, siya lang ang halos nakapasa sa lahat ng mga ating criteria. Okay? Now, on the aspect of sample size, so you have to consider this, that there should be a minimum of at least 200 for path analysis. So ang kanyang respondents po are 400, therefore it was able to meet the acceptable size for path analysis, which is 200. So here, Model 3 is a product of a seemingly more elaborated theory where there is a removal of weak influencing variables that are observed as not significantly linked to other variables in other models. So showing in the Model 1, the direct and indirect influence of the exogenous variables, which are the 3 independent variables, to the endogenous variable, which is the dependent variable, which is actually the product of various theories that we have gathered in our literature. Kaya sinasabi ko that you have, in choosing this variables in your study, you have to make sure that there are existing studies telling us that the organizational climate has effect to competence, self-efficacy has effect to competence, and work task motivations effect to competence. So there should be existing literature on that or various theories. Now, in the Model 3, this portion provides analysis on the interrelationships among the variables of the study. So you can probably see here in the figure 4, doon sa baba, that the amount of the variance explained by the combined influence of the 3 exogenous variables on the pedagogical competence of teachers is 74%. Hence, it can be gleaned that 74% of the variance of pedagogical competence of teachers can be attributed to the combined influence of your 3 independent variables. So where did we get the 74% now? So you can probably see it here. So it's 74% of the variance of pedagogical competence was actually affected by the combined influence of your 3 exogenous variables. Now, here, specifically, organizational climate is a beta standardized of 0.79, work task motivation of 0.72. It has a direct influence on pedagogical competence of mother tongue teachers. So look at this. You can probably see here, yan, si self-efficacy ay may direct, yan, makikita mo ang arrow dyan, direct ang kanyang influence kay pedagogical competence. Si work task motivation, direct din ang kanyang influence kay pedagogical competence. How about organizational climate? Look at this, wala siyang direct. No, wala siyang direct effect kay pedagogical competence. What does it mean? It only means that self-efficacy, okay, I'm speaking about self-efficacy. Oh, wait, let me check. 0.79. Okay, 0.79. I'm sorry. See, it's not, please forgive me. Yung sinasabi pala na dito kanina, okay, pardon, this discussion here speaks about the impact, no, the direct influence, okay. Now, self-efficacy shows indirect influence on pedagogical competence through its direct influence. This is not self-efficacy. This should be organizational climate, okay. Okay. Sige, pardon. Organizational climate shows indirect influence on pedagogical competence of mother tongue multilingual education through its direct influence on self-efficacy, and work task motivations also shows direct influence. So you can probably see here that si organizational climate walang direct influence. It's only the self-efficacy and work task motivation. But look at organizational climate has direct influence to self-efficacy as well as work task motivation. So therefore, organizational climate needs the self-efficacy and work task motivation to influence pedagogical competence kasi wala siyang direct influence on that, on the dependent variable. Okay? Now, here, of course, in your study, you based on the result of your study, you have to provide existing literature trying to explain the direct in the indirect influence of your exogenous variable. And that is now that your task in presenting that in the discussion part of your dissertation of your paper. Okay, kasi itong results na part, this is just a presentation of the different existing data that we have, showing the model, explaining what the model means. And in the discussion part of your paper, dun mo na i-explain ang nature ng direct and indirect influence ng iyong exogenous variable to your dependent variable or endogenous variable, and you have to support it with existing literature. Okay? So therefore, ang ating conclusion ngayon, it's the model 3 showing the best fit model of your interrelationship or the structural relations between your exogenous variable and the endogenous variable, which shows that only self-efficacy and work task motivation has a direct influence on pedagogical competence, while organizational climate has indirect influence to the pedagogical competence. Totoo naman, di ba? Technically, self-efficacy and work task motivation are personal factors kasi, no, na it has direct effect sa ating competence as a teacher. And yung organizational climate natin, in general, yung school climate natin, it could be, for example, it could be either bad or a positive climate. But sometimes teachers, hindi siya direct nakaka-influence agad, no? It could have influence on our self-efficacy, but our self-efficacy na sa our climate in general at work would impact how we see ourselves performing in the school. So with that, it would influence also our competence. Kaya hindi siya, kumbaga, kailangan mo nang i-influence ni climate yung self-efficacy natin to improve our pedagogical competence. That makes it indirect. Okay? So I hope I was able to share something, though hindi lahat ang pwede kong ma-share ngayon, but I hope you were able to grasp how structural equation modeling is done in the context of the samples that I've given to you. So kung dissertation, ideal talaga na dissertation paper, itong sample ng aking advisee ang model po for a structural equation model, having at least 4 variables. You have 3 independent or exogenous variable and 1 dependent or endogenous variable. Okay, but with my published study, it's a simple type of structural equation model that I did. Okay, thank you.
All right, so if I am not mistaken, Doc, you are done with your talk, right? Yes po. Thank you very much, Doc Erick Baloran, for that very substantial and informative sharing that you just had earlier. So this time, let us have the question and answer portion. If you have questions, kindly you can queue in your questions in the chat box. According to Ma'am Arlene, very informative and substantial po, Doc Erick. Helpful po talaga ang inyong ni-share for us to further understand SEM. So if you have question, you can click the raise hand button so that you will be recognized. Or if you opt not to speak, you can type your question in our chat box. Some more question?
Sir, can I add?
Yes po, Doc.
Okay. Isa sa mga challenge natin as PhD student, if you will use structural equation model, is to choose the variables. May tanong dito, what are the challenges? Okay, sige. Ma'am, again, isa sa mga challenge po is ang pag-decide kung anong mga variables ang i-include mo sa study mo. Okay, isa yan sa mga challenges. You have to, of course, what's the technique? Read a lot of literature. Read a lot of literature. And of course, you have to be observant with your context in your school. For example, if you're teaching senior high school, if it's in the context of the science learners, ano ba ang napapansin mo na problema na nai-encounter ng ating mga students. So for example, you wanted, it's about the student engagement in science learning. Sir, masyadong mababa po ang engagement ng aming mga students, lalo-lalo sa science. They tend to get bored when doing experiments. They tend to get bored when doing a lot of activities related to science. Bakit ganun po? Sir, ano bang mga factors? So doon ka magsisimula. Ano kayong mga factors? Okay, let me start with one factor that affects student engagement in science. Baka number one, self-efficacy. Kasi mababa yung tingin nila sa sarili nila na hindi nila kaya mag-learn ng science, no? Number two is, for example, student interest in learning. Wala talaga silang interest kasi they don't like science. So you have self-efficacy, student interest. Number three, iba ka factor naman din yung metacognitive awareness ng mga bata. Hindi sila masyadong marunong mag-analyze ng mga different science concepts. So mababa yung metacognitive awareness nila. And that is related to reading. Diba? So meron ka nang na-identify na tatlong factors that affect student engagement in science. Number one, self-efficacy. Number two, student interest. Number three, metacognitive awareness. Now, the next challenge you have is you have to look for existing studies. Maghanap ka ng mga studies na nagsasabi, na nag-reveal na si self-efficacy may effect sa engagement in learning. Okay? Another thing, or it's dili necessary na engagement, good ang term. Remember, engagement could be related to what? Participation, right? Okay? So, kaya minsan nababox tayo na wala man talagang study na nag-engagement ang ginamit na term, no? Tapos wala talagang study, sir, nagsasabi na yung self-efficacy may effect sa engagement in science. Ang nakita ko lang, sir, is self-efficacy and its effect to engagement in mathematics, in English. Pwede ko bang magamit yun na literature, sir? The answer is yes. Pwede mong magamit yun na literature kasi it establishes the theory or the proposition that self-efficacy affects engagement in learning. But it's in the other context, in English or in math. Now, how will you utilize that? That would lead now to your research gap. Na pwede mong i-discuss sa paper mo that most of the studies conducted showing the relationship between self-efficacy and learning and student engagement are done in the context of mathematics and English learning. And few studies were done, or even no studies were done, correlating, linking or associating the self-efficacy and engagement in the context of science learning. And that's your research gap. That's the uniqueness of your study, because you will be the first, possibly you will be the first researcher in the local context who will be doing that analysis. Okay? So, meron ka na nakita. Next, maghanap ka na naman ng literature na nagsasabi na si student interest may influence kay engagement and learning. So, may nakita ka na. Next, tingnan mo na naman kung may mga studies na nagsasabi na ang metacognitive awareness may influence kay student engagement. Okay? So, kapag may mga existing studies na yan, it only means that your variables in your study are fit for correlating. Your exogenous variables, your three exogenous variables, self-efficacy, interest, and metacognitive awareness, are variables with existing studies na having correlation or effect or influence to the student engagement in learning. So okay na tayo. Next challenge na naman, kailangan may existing questionnaire ka downloaded from the internet. So dapat may downloaded questionnaire ka with indicators for your self-efficacy, for interest, for metacognitive awareness, and for student engagement. So how will you do that? You go to Google Scholar or any databases, particularly in Google Scholar, you type self-efficacy of student scale. You type scale, student interest scale, metacognitive awareness scale, What else? Student engagement scale. Sir, what if ang nakita kong student interest scale is sa mathematics? Pero ang kanyang mga indicators ay items pwede namang gamitin sa science, sir, kasi hindi siya masyadong specific na mention niya yung mga mathematical na mga concepts, kasi it's parang a general type of questionnaire na pwede siyang gamitin din sa ibang learning areas like science and English. Pwede ko ba siyang gamitin, sir? The answer is yes. You can adapt it. Adapt, no? ADAPT. That means you need to do modification. You contextualize it in the science instruction. Yung nakita ko na question sa self-efficacy, sir, is parang generic siya. Hindi siya specific sa science. So you can still adapt that one. Kasi kung ikaw mismo gagawa ng questionnaire, that would be another study to be done. And that is exploratory and confirmatory factor analysis. You will start from qualitative down to quantitative. It's the development and validation of a measurement scale. So it's another study. Okay? So power ka na masyado kung gagawin mo pa lahat ng questionnaire yung 4 mo na variables, tapos mag-proceed ka na naman ng structural equation model. Wow, ang galing mo niyan, no? So matagal ka matatapos sa PhD mo. So if you wanted to craft a questionnaire, yan na lang yung magiging dissertation mo. Just do exploratory and confirmatory factor analysis. Like for example, wala kang in fact, the exploratory and confirmatory factor analysis applies structural equation model analysis. Yung mga fit indices meron pa rin sa interpretation, yung EFA and CFA. Okay? So ngayon, pag may nakita ka ng 4 na questionnaire sa 4 mo na variables, good to go na tayo. Okay? You can have now the title. For example, you can have the title, you would say, a structural equation model on the self-efficacy, interest, and metacognitive awareness of senior high school science learners. Pwedeng ganon. No? So, pwede ding ang structural equation model nasa last. Pwede mong sabihin na self-efficacy, interest, metacognitive awareness of senior high school I'm sorry. We have, what was that? Self-efficacy, interest, metacognitive awareness, and student engagement among senior high school science learners, a structural equation model. So ganon ang paggawa ng title. So you will be really presenting that in your title. Or pwede ding sabihin mo, a structural equation model on student engagement in science learning. Pwedeng ganun lang. Ibig sabihin, ang implication yan, may mga existing exogenous variables ka na i-measure mo as determinants, no, of this student engagement using structural equation model. Ganun po. So in short, magbasa ng mga literature, maraming variables na may mga correlation sila, tapos you can apply that in science instruction. Whether pwede din sa context ng teachers. Bakit kaya yung mga teachers, ano kayo nakaka-affect sa kanilang performance in teaching science? 'Di ba? So maghanap ka ng mga variables na pwedeng maka-affect sa performance ng mga teachers in science. Okay? Then you have to search that, search those existing studies, tas maghanap ng questionnaire downloaded from the internet. So isa yan sa pinakaunang challenge ng mga students, PhD students na gustong mag-structural equation model, yung paghahanap ng literature and available questionnaire. Okay?
All right, so thank you very much po, Doc. I guess we have some questions here. If you allow me, Doc, please let me read the questions na lang po. But I guess this one was addressed already according to Ma'am Jacqueline. Thank you so much po, Doc Eric. May ask po, pwede po ba i-combine yung EFA, CEFA sa SEM? So I guess this was addressed, Doc. You have made mention of this one earlier.
SEM
Tama po ba,
analysis
Doc?
incorporated in EFA and CFA, especially for the goodness of fit measures.
Okay, so here's another question from Ma'am Josephine. How beneficial po using SEM in qualitative research?
Okay. that question, I would explain that in the context of mixed method. There are panel, I am a panel of studies using mixed method. Ang kanyang ginamit is explanatory sequential mixed method. What is an explanatory sequential mixed method? You start from quanti to quali. Iba yung AFA and CFA kasi that is exploratory sequential mixed method. It's a type of mixed method. Ang exploratory sequential mixed method, you start from quali to quanti kasi your goal is to create a questionnaire, create a measurement scale. So you start with quali. For example, you wanted to create, sir, wala talaga akong questionnaire about, wala talaga akong nakitang questionnaire about
Daot na po na akong door.
Okay.
Okay, so nakabit kayo mag-usap.
Okay lang. Halimbawa, sir, wala talaga akong nakitang questionnaire on student interest in science learning. So sige, mag-EFA, CFA ka. Pwedeng ikaw makagawa ng unang Filipino contextualized questionnaire on student interest in science learning. O, diba? So ngayon, magbabasa ka ng maraming literature about student interest in science. Makwali man na, makwanti man na. Pero may importante quali. Kadaghan kayo kag makita dito ng mga ideas. Karon, from that studies that you have, meron ka ng mga naisip na mga predetermined themes of student interest or predetermined factors or indicators. Kasi ang goal ng FI is you will be creating indicators with questions, di ba? You'll be creating domains. Another term for indicator, domain, component, factor, no? So, gagawa ka ng factors or domains, no? Ngayon, meron ka ng mga naisip na mga domains based sa iyong mga binasang literature. Okay? Now, with that, you create a very good instrument, interview instrument, para lumabas lahat yung mga statements ng ating mga students that describe their interest in science. So, halimbawa, nakagawa ka na ng 50 items from that extracted statements from the students. That's the quali part. Okay? Isi-survey mo na yan ngayong 50 items na yan sa mas bigger population. Kasi sa quali, it requires only more than 5, no? Or 10, no? 10 or more. Then for quanti, meron tayong rule of the thumb. I'm explaining explo pa ha, not explanatory. Rule of the thumb na how many items, one item is equivalent to 5 respondents. That's 1:5. So if you have 50 items na na-formulate mo, that's 1 times 50. 50 times 5 pila? 250. So you will be requiring 250 respondents for EFA survey. EFA pa. Exploratory. So pag survey anak karon i-run na ni EFA software, so kanang 50 items pwede pa natanggalon ni EFA. Ang mabilin na lang, for example, 30 items niya, i-group na ni EFA. 10 items is factor 1, 10 items factor 2, another 10 items factor 3. So tatlong factors ang na-create or tatlong indicators. Tapos tingnan mo, yung grouping ni 10 items, anong one idea ang makikreate? Anong theme? So you will be now naming the factors, naming this indicator based on the ideas you have sa mga items na nag-group. So okay na, 30 items. Ngayon, you will proceed to confirmatory factor analysis. That is, you confirm kung this is really the final questionnaire. And you will be having the best fit model using of course, incorporating the SEM analysis. Okay? So, kasi gagawa ka ng model, no? Ngayon, halimbawa, how will you do that? Magsi-survey ka na naman ulit. Okay? So, pwede na 30 times 5. Pila? So, that is 50, 150, tama ba? So, yung 150, sila yung magsi-CFA na naman na mag-a-answer. CFA quest for the final analysis. So, yung iraran mo na siya sa CFA, pwede pang tanggalin yan ni CFA, yung ibang items. Okay? Halimbawa, 5 items na lang ang na-retain. Therefore, there are 5 items per factor. Okay? So, a total of 15 items na lang ang naiwan na items for your final questionnaire for student interest. And that CFA will be analyzed incorporating SEM analysis. Yan. 'Di ba? Mataas ang proseso pero enjoyed po, no? Meron na akong advice because that was my dissertation and ang aking advice last year My questionnaire was, I was able to create a questionnaire on language revitalization practices of the Bagobo Tagabawa. Yung aking advisee, gumawa siya ng questionnaire on vocabulary learning strategies. So kayo, pwede kayong mag-isip ng variable na gusto nyong gawa ng questionnaire. Okay, so still SEM analysis is incorporated in CFA analysis or CF analysis to redundant na, confirmatory factor analysis. Okay, now yung question, how beneficial is SEM in qualitative research? That is applied in explanatory sequential approach, mixed method. Okay, you start with SEM. Diba? Meron ka ng result, nakagawa ka ng best fit model, napakita mo yung direct and indirect influence ng iyong exogenous variable to your endogenous variable. The next step that you'll be doing is you will proceed to qualitative research. In short, you will ask your participants, ang mga respondents mo, you will ask them to explain the result. Okay? So, for example, it came out that their self-efficacy and more work task motivation directly influence their competence. They can further explain that. What does it mean that it has direct influence to their competence? Yung self-efficacy and yung work motivation nila. And how organizational climate indirectly influence their pedagogical competence. So therefore, the significant results of your quantitative can be explained further through your qualitative interviews. You will be creating qualitative interviews to explain the significant quantitative or statistical results you have in your SEM, okay, analysis. So that is explanatory sequential mixed method. And you will be doing also thematic analysis, and you will have also integration phase. What do you mean by that? Sa mixed method, ang integration phase is tingnan mo kung paano ba nag-merge or paano gi-support ni qualitative ang results sa quantitative. Okay? Yan. So meron tayong model for that, for the integration phase analysis. Okay?
All right, so it would be
Thank
better to go.
you.
Thank you very much, Doc. No, so I guess we'll be learning more from you if we could have the luxury of time. I guess this is gonna be the last question, Doc, because I believe you still have an important matter to attend to.
I
According
actually
to
have
Mercy
my panel
Joy,
defense pa after. Sige, laban
yes
lang.
po. This is gonna be last question po, Doc. Doc, for clarification po, yung items na wala na group, terminated na po ba automatically po?
You're speaking about EFA po, Ma'am Mercy?
Yes po, Doc.
Yeah.
Kasi nag-factor kami kahapon. Merong items na wala na appeal dito sa rotated component.
Yeah.
Din na may tricks.
Terminated na talaga siya. Ibig sabihin, it does not pass the factor loading.
Okay.
Kasi usually we have a ceiling na standard for factor loading, like for example 0.4. Kapag mababa siya sa 0.4, tatanggalin yan automatically ni EFA.
Okay. Thank you, Doc.
So EFA and CFA would be another training to do. Okay? And it would be better mag-hands-on talaga kayo niyan. You can use JAS software for that. Maganda ang JAS software for EFA. But
Yes,
for
Doc.
creating the model, maganda pa rin ang AMOS. No, kasi minsan yung ang EFA kasi is pangit yung mag-create niya na figure. So maganda pa rin ang AMOS. Okay?
All right, so thank you very much, Doc, for that very significant sharing of insights and inputs. So we have attended series of webinar from this subject, but I guess this one is the most clear of all. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
Doc. Doc, can we ask for more time for you with a photo opportunity so that we can have a sort of MOV to be submitted that we really had our interview with you?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I did not get that. Ano po yan?
Can we have a photo opportunity po, Doc? Just
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry. Sige. Okay.
okay. Can I request Ma'am Mercy to take shots? All right, and 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, another shot and another slide. 1, 2, 3, smile. Napakalapit naman yung face ko. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, thank you very much po, Doc. So in behalf of the whole PhD Science Education class, I really love this session and I'd like to extend my warmest and sincerest gratitude to you, Doc. Thank you very much
Thank
po.
you so much for inviting Ma'am Mercy. God bless everyone.
Thank
Yes,
you,
po.
Doc Eric. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Doc.
Doc.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Doc.
God bless sa
Thank
inyong
you po.
PhD journey and
Yes po,
dissertation
Doc.
writing. God bless. You can just PM me anytime if you want an assistant,
Wow.
some coaching
Wow,
or
that's
sharing,
great to
etc. You can
hear.
just message me.
Wow.
Okay?
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
sir.
Bye po,
Thank
Doc. Thank
you.
you
Thank you
po.
Thank you, Doc.